Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. I don't know why I kept thinking it was you.
Jones. I wrote to the Gerald Johnson for the body of the old CTA to invite the new director from Caltrans to Big Up Heights. We're getting some money, so we're short $700,000 for a trail.
All right, good evening and welcome to the October 22nd meeting of the Garden Grove City Council. We're going to start with the Housing Authority, so I'll hand it over to Fat. Oh, I'm sorry, are you logged in yet?
No, ma'am, I have not been able to log in.
Sorry,
It's
hang tight
okay.
1 second, and we'll see if we can get him logged in. Is everybody else logged in? Okay.
Okay, I'm in.
Okay, you want to go straight to Housing Authority and go ahead and run with it?
Have we, Madam
She'll do
Clerk,
roll call for
could you do the roll calls, please?
Commissioner Beckles. Commissioner Brightigam.
Here.
Commissioner Jones.
Here.
Commissioner Kloffenstein.
Here.
Commissioner O'Neill.
Here.
Commissioner Solorio.
Here.
Vice Chair Kim Nguyen.
Here.
Chair Bowie.
Here.
And let the record show that Commissioner Tu-Ho Nguyen is absent.
Okay, I would like to open oral communication. Do we have any card or anyone who would like to speak with regard to the Housing Authority? Seeing none, I now close oral communication. We have two consent items. Could I have the motion, please?
Move on. Second.
Please call for the vote. Okay, matter from Chair and Commissioner or Directors?
That was motion received, 8 yes votes.
Matter from the Commission? Okay, hearing none, I now adjourn the meeting to the next regular Housing Authority meeting to be held on Tuesday, November 26th, and I'm now passing back to the City Council.
Thank you. So we'll convene the City Council meeting. Thank you, guys.
Bye, Carol. See you next time. Take care.
Okay, so we'll convene the City Council meeting. Madam Clerk, would you like to call roll?
Yes. Councilmember Brightigam.
Here.
Councilmember O'Neill.
Here.
Councilmember Bowie.
Here.
Councilmember Kim Nguyen.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Kloffenstein.
Here.
Mayor Jones.
Here.
And Councilmember Tu-Ho Nguyen is absent.
Right. I'll ask Lisa Kim to do the invocation, and then after that, can I ask Councilmember O'Neill to lead us in the pledge?
Thank you, Mayor. If I could ask everyone to please stand and prepare yourself according to your faith. Dear Lord, thank you for the opportunity and the freedom to gather together to serve the people of Garden Grove. We ask for your guidance, wisdom, and understanding this evening as we unite and work towards the good and betterment of this community. We bless our discussions and deliberations so that they may be peaceful and productive. Amen.
Please join me in the pledge of the flag. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, before we go to oral communications, I'd like to pull an item forward from our consent calendar. So item 2A. This is, whoops. Yeah, this is adoption of a proclamation declaring October 2019 as Energy Awareness Month and October 30, 2019 as Weatherization Day in Garden Grove. So can I actually make a motion that we approve that consent item?
Move the motion.
Call the vote?
Motion received, 6 yes votes.
And we actually have a proclamation I'd like to present to Christine Baczynski, if we can, and then
right. 3, 2, 1. One more. 3, 2, and 1. Thank you, Rex.
Hold on. Face forward.
Couple others. These are the important ones, right?
Awesome, thank you. Thank you so much for coming.
I'd like to say thank you for this proclamation and recognizing Energy Awareness Month and Weatherization Day on behalf of Community Action Partnerships of Orange County. And I'd like to introduce Darius, who's boots on the ground for us.
I'd like to echo Christine's appreciation for this honor, and I also want to spend a little time to speak a little bit about our programs, if I'm able. I don't know how much everyone knows about Community Action Partnership of Orange County, which we've been existing for 40 years. But our home base is actually, although we service all of Orange County, our home base is actually in Garden Grove, down Chapman to Monarch. The couple of things I think it's important that we highlight, a couple of services that we provide Garden Grove. And the first one is the weatherization. Now, I'm going to highlight 3, but 2 of them are directly aligned and connected to the proclamation that the governor just signed over for us. For those who do not know what the weatherization services are, it is the practice of protecting a home and the interiors of the home from the elements that are outside. A couple of examples of that are the tuning of cooling systems, as well as replacing windows and doors. And although those are just a couple examples, every time our assessors go into homes, their number one priority is to make sure that every system in that home is working energy efficiently. And that's the most important thing. Now, through the last 5 years, 2014 to 2018, we have been able to provide financial services to 250 dwelling places in Garden Grove, California, to an excess of about $500,000. So that is really huge. And then the other program that we want to highlight this evening, if we can, is our utility assistance program. Now, the utility assistance program, our agency's main goal is to make sure the lights stay on in every home. We really don't want to see anyone disconnected, and we don't want to see anybody in any home without electricity. Now, in order to do that, we have given, I would say, roughly about $1.6 million to approximately 5,000 homes in that 5-year period that we spoke of earlier, 2014, 2018, to Garden Grove. So those are the 2 programs that are directly tied to the proclamation that we have just received, but I would be remiss if I didn't provide you with one extraordinary program that we also service. That's our Orange County Food Bank. I think some people really are familiar with that program, and it's an Orange County Food Bank, but it's a senior boxes program. So we distribute in that 5-year span. Now, those who have handles on your chair, you might want to hold on to it. But though we have distributed over 500,000 boxes of food to senior citizens in Garden Grove. And that is roughly about 9,800, close to 10,000 a month. So Christine and I, on behalf of our organization, would like to thank you and Garden Grove and the community for this honor. We're really, really grateful.
Thank you guys for all the great work you do, and thanks for coming in here in person. Okay, we'll now go on to oral communications. Have a number of cards, starting with Tom Raber.
Hi, I'm Tom Raber. I want to start off my 5 minutes of fame speech thanking Bill Murray, Public Works, and the contractor that they hired to make Westminster great again. I mean, Westminster, West Garden Grove great again. I tell you, I really messed that one up. Took 4 days, Friday and a Saturday, on 2 consecutive weekends, and it looks awesome. So, after those trees were cut, I noticed that at the Valley View townhomes that some of the trees were overhanging onto the sidewalk. So today I walked over there to take a picture so I can send it in to the citizens' request. On the way walking over there on the public sidewalk, I tripped. And I tripped because of a simple reason. That HOA cut a foot of the sidewalk away X amount of years ago to plant their ivy that's on the walls. So besides cutting city property, they also have their plants on city land. I did go to City Hall today to find out if code enforcement or Public Works was responsible for the sidewalks. I was told either fill out a thing for citizen requests for the code enforcement or do it online, and they'll determine it. Well, I'm here to say to Bill Murray, who I respect, to Lisa Kim, and I saw David Dent here, I will stay here after this meeting to show you the pictures of what I'm talking about. I suggest that since the new code has been updated for sidewalks, that they are 4 inches thick and not 3 inches when they were poured X amount of years ago, that HOA is responsible to pour all new sidewalks down Tiffany. Most likely on Cerulean, it's that same way, but I did not go over there. There are trees on that HOA that are going 15 feet across the sidewalk on Valley View. I walked over there and I got a spider in my face. There is no reason to have a tree going across a property line into the public area. I'd like that also to be addressed. Since I was at City Hall today, I walked across the street to the fire department or the fire authority to find out what's happened with the case that I had opened. That door was locked. That door was locked 2 weeks ago also on a Friday when City Hall was still open. At that time there, Eric Elmer stated that they have their doors shut whenever City Hall is shut. Well, that given Friday, City Hall was open. Today, City Hall was open, but yet the fire authority is shutting the door. The nice lady that did open the door told me that the reason why they lock it is because they're not safe. So, if they're right next to the police department, why wouldn't they not be safe? Good question, isn't it? You know, they are here for that $25 million to go ahead and make us feel safe. And for us to go ahead and have any discussion with them for any safety of any residents in Garden Grove. And to me, that has failed. Thank you, and I still have another minute, but I will pass it on. Thanks.
Greg Durfee.
My name is Craig Durfee. For the residents who haven't seen me for a while, the reason I didn't show up because someone decided to call my son inappropriately with using resources, and I just decided that was enough. But I'm back because I believe the tragedies are happening in our state and our country, which I'm helping Congress, the superintendent of the state, legislators, and our law enforcement on the issue of the crisis. And my heart as a owner, founder of this organization, Parents Right for Those Children, for 23 years, in their record Congress wrote AB 17 on police training for autism. I'm back tonight because we have an opportunity to be leaders in this council and our school board. And I have the information very briefly, offer you suggestions. I wrote to you several times for the PAM request. This situation can lower it down to what Utah has done, 1 in 5. In other words, the 5th lowest in the United States suicide. My heart goes out to the families who are suffering from this. The voice says really clearly is established today, we're in a crisis. So I have done my condolences, but I'm also here to recognize that we have an opportunity to meet our needs of our community if we will use Prop 63 for the benefit of our recreation, our communication systems. It's there. The jail is being used, Prop 63, to treat our inmates with job skills. There's no reason we can't do that, Council. Now, here what we have is an opportunity to do something to change, and this is my first one, is one of the factors bullying, which leads to depression and suicide. That's because the U.S. Department of Education, StopBullying.gov, Obama administration found the lack of empathy is not the SEL verbal of our schools, but actual dogs and therapy that's been proven to solve the problem. So in a sense, this is a shirt I think I found on Amazon. It says, kind is the new cool style hashtag thing. And it's just a story, if you look up what's wrong with our children and the isolation of technology, which lowers their character, they can't be employed. It lowers their empathy, become violent, and ADHD medically. So how do we get there? We go with dogs and teach them empathy and teach them that they have a reason to live, because we need to de-escalate technology and put more time and energy with a basic medical prevention so we can bring our kids back to life. Now, I would like to award somebody here who I've got to know, who is a very fine person. I feel he has served our country. My family served our country. 3 family members. He is a professional craftsman in his industry. He has met him enough times that he has the conscience and ability to see the vision of our city. And I think because my wife mispacked the skies, I have one for him, but I wanted to give a spotlight to as the organization of PWRC that's going to grow and take off, because that's been used. I'm in 11 foreign countries, Council. I have a work of 2 sites, Social Emotional Pause, that has been reaching 11 foreign countries now. Then I have Info, period, Social Pause, that I'm building, and I wanted to raise $12,000 to maybe go to a nonprofit, because I've proven myself in 23 years. But that's up to the public. And my motherboard is gone on my computer bar, so I'm doing everything I can. Oh, by the way, I believe you all attended the stakeholder meeting for the school, right? All agreed? Did you hear about an announcement for community stakeholder? That was me. That was me in my hours of research to find out that violation of education codes. You understand, there are education codes that had to be enforced. And then, at the end, a member of the school board said that the banner had to be certified. Where do you have breast cancer, prostate cancer, and other things? LVG have to certify a banner. So I'm here tonight to stand up for my organization and say that we have needed investigation of our conduct of our government agencies to ensure they're not abusing the privilege for law enforcement, and also for the purpose of meeting our needs of our community. Because Mayor, you are under the federal law opportunity. I gave you the information a couple times to oversee our education. They urge you. I've given you the reasons tonight to be very cautious for what's in a crisis. We're at 34%. Garden Grove, sir, is at 20% risk of suicide at 1 in 5. So we have a czar of the governor now on mental health. It's a crisis in our state, and I'm leading the charge with the mental health department. And I brought in Hope Squad to Irvine. So let's get BWellC part of our mission. Let's adopt your policy of a mental health crisis with your resolution. Let's see some action and quit ignoring me. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Stedman.
Thank you. I'm speaking to you today as a citizen and resident to raise your awareness about a movement that's taking place around our state and this country. This is my testimony. For months, I've been talking to the folks of Garden Grove about the mental, physical, and spiritual health benefits of psilocybin mushrooms and other plant entheogens based on thousands of years of traditional use as well as decades of clinical research. In this time, I've gathered many supporters who want to see decriminalization, not legalization, of entheogens succeed. These supporters include people from all classes and communities, including parents, professionals, students, people that self-identify as drug addicted, and the mentally ill. I believe that criminalization, not legalization, of entheogens fits into justice reform, mental health care, cognitive liberty in many regards. Here's a short and simple elaboration on the Schedule I substances I'm working to decriminalize. I believe that no one should be penalized for seeking self-healing or pursuing cognitive liberties. Despite no medical evidence, the Nixon administration claimed that entheogens such as psilocybin mushrooms had no medical value and a high risk for abuse. This is simply not true. Our understanding of the motivations behind the drug war, affirmed by the words of John Eckelman, Nixon's own counsel and assistant. The drug war was a ploy used against black and brown people as well as people in the anti-war movement, especially community organizations and people with lower incomes. This is not an original ploy. Criminalization of substances in the category of drugs has been a target against people for decades. The first anti-marijuana laws in the Mid and Southwest during the turn of the 20th century were directed at Mexican immigrants and Mexican Americans. Today, people of color, Latinos, and black communities are still subject to widely disproportionate drug enforcement and sentencing practices. I say that it is a civil liberty for us to decide how we develop our relationships with nature. Fighting for the decriminalization and of natural occurring plants and fungi serve as a stepping stone for a paradigm shift in drug policy. Psilocybin mushrooms, ayahuasca, ibogaine, mescaline-containing cacti have been used in ceremonies, rituals for thousands of years. They have medicinal, cultural, and spiritual values. More recently, top universities, organizations have been running clinical trials with great success. The results are showing that these natural substances are effective for healing a variety of psychological, spiritual, and physical diseases, ranging from addiction, PTSD, depression, anxiety, cluster headaches. These substances themselves are non-addictive. In fact, they're anti-addictive. Garden Grove is dealing with its share of addictions and mental health issues. As we all know, addiction and mental illness often land people in the throes of the criminal justice system. It does not have to be that way. Psilocybin mushrooms are one of the world's most profound and ancient medicines, growing naturally in parks and forests. Psilocybin mushrooms have been grown in almost every part of the world and can be cultivated for next to no money. The more communities that take a stand for the ancient natural medicines, the more doors we can open for people who are at the bottom rung of society that can utilize plants and fungi for treatment and spiritual remediation. When a city takes a stand, we're empowering all the people. There are thousands of people in the city of Garden Grove who already use these ancient medicines. In order to safely decriminalize these substances, we believe we must step up education in the community. Myself and other groups in the city have already been providing grassroots education for some time and plan to continue at no cost to the city. This is an effort to reconnect. If you would like resources or more information, I can provide them. I'm also willing to carry on this discussion through email, phone, or in person. I've sent you all a copy of the resolution that the organizers of Decriminalize Nature Oakland submitted to their city council, who unanimously have voted it through. Seeing how Oakland's police chief gave her blessing for the resolution in Oakland, we're hoping that as a peer, Chief DeRay will also do the same. Decriminalize Nature Oakland resolution is an open source, and we can use that as our template. I'm asking for your support. Thank you.
Robin Marcario.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, staff. I'm Robin Marcario, lifelong resident here. This Parks, Recreation, and Facilities Master Plan is your 4A item. It provides a baseline and a framework to prioritize funding and maintenance of our parks. The report reflects lots of demographics, specifically our aging population and the over 50% dissatisfaction with the parks and facilities maintenance, and the need for $34 million over the next decade to accomplish the improved and safer parks in Garden Grove. I wanted to highlight just a couple of things, as I know time will be limited. One, I wanted to give congrats to the council in general for Steelcraft and sort of seeing this reimagine coming to fruition. And the report on page 9.3 highlights some of that. It talks about the reimagine, that was the concept back in 2009, with the Mind Mixer and its success, also having the Cal Poly students put together the plan. You also have the success with the community events with Open Streets. We look forward to having another Open Streets in October next year. And thirdly, the master plan talks about the upgrade and infrastructure improvements that will further position the city for grant funding that may help with that as well. And it was also nice to see the on page 5.2, the Community Services Department received 2 awards. The Award of Excellence in Distinction for Economic Vitality and Marketing and Communications in 2018. And so it's kind of nice to see the departments involved also be recognized. A couple of other things I wanted to highlight that were in here. On page 310, it talks about when they were getting the input from the public, that the public would like to see concerts that are throughout the city, not just in one side of town. On page 311, staff talked about the importance of underserved acreage and public art that's underserved, meaning we need more aesthetics, and that's actually one of the ways to, one, deter graffiti and to create community pride. So coming up with some kind of cohesive plan of what we'd like to do in the way of public art would be kind of nice as well. On page 313, to encourage council to develop a public art concept kind of throughout the city. We sort of have some nice additions with the public art on the building there. The Green, Ever Gonzalez has done a fabulous job. You've seen some other local people. We have the Girl Scout person, I forgot her name now. I'm drawing a blank. She did the utility boxes. We have the mosaics there, so it's kind of nice to see the downtown coming together. It also in the report talks about the need to improve the ADA and general infrastructure. The irrigation systems are antiquated and outdated, and when you improve your irrigation system, one, will maintain the life of the plants, and 2, reduce your water usage. So that seemed, and there was also a mention about the ponds at the regional park, this question of do we keep the ponds or do we do something else with them, because the ponds seem to be an ongoing issue. The need for more dog parks. There was a mention in the report about putting one at Hare School Park, which makes sense. Also, with regards to the aging population and the need for more, kind of walkable around the park kind of situations, like we have, like my husband and I frequently go to Stanton Centennial Park, which is an absolutely fabulous template for what works in a park. So I'd like to see more of that. You have your park, and then you have the perimeter, and lots of people walking, and dogs. And actually, when you have more walkers and joggers, they become the patrol for the park, and more of a deterrent for any illegal activity. So increasing usage with regards to walkers is, good all the way around. More healthy for all of us. And on page 6.3, I don't know where I am for time, the second benefit of the community request, when you upgrade the parks, the positive impacts is you have an overall community pride. It's kind of like our parks and public works in general. They are the face of our community. When you go travel, you see the landscaping, you see the parks, you see the graffiti. They're the ones that make our city beautiful. I use the analogy of a house. You know, you have your house, you have your landscaping, you have your paint. If you don't have that, and it doesn't look good, you're not going to be able to have, you know. This says here that when you improve the parks in general and landscaping, it improves the property values, and people are then more willing to improve their own properties. It also helps with new businesses, to generate new business. You want to go to a city that looks beautiful and is beautiful. It's kind of daunting when you look at this report that it's millions of dollars that need to be dedicated. It needs to be a priority, and this report reflects that, and I look forward to council budgeting for it and not moving away from it, but sticking with our parks as a priority. Thank you.
Don't forget the PA right away. It's right, $700,000 short that way.
Jonathan Swain.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and city staff. My name is Jonathan Swaim. I'm a lifelong resident of Garden Grove, and I have a great pride, respect, and love for the city that I call home. I try to attend these meetings as regularly as I can. However, I was unable to attend the last meeting because the wife wanted to go to Disneyland. So I went online to watch, thanks to GGTV3. I was shocked and saddened at what I watched. To see terms like idiot and stupid being directed from this podium to a member of the council was quite frankly embarrassing and wrong. GG has made national news a few times this last year, and not for the right reasons. And I had friends from around the country reaching out, asking if where I live was that bad. And then to witness that on our city council meeting, it was hard to see, and does not added to the unjust negative image of our city. We are better than that. Unfortunately, those that are rude and disrespectful are generally the loudest. I urge you, Mayor, to hold us, the public, to accountable to the same standards of respect and decorum that you have amongst one another when we are given the space to address you. We cannot let the nasty language and vitriol of national partisan politics infiltrate and tarnish our meetings. After all, we can rise above that, since each one of your seats is a nonpartisan office. You set the standards and call the meeting to order. Let's let our meeting be representative of the great city that we call home. I urge the residents to show mutual respect to our elected officials as well, even when we disagree with them. Not because of their status as elected officials, but because they are human beings, and we all deserve respect. Thank you.
Charles Mitchell.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council and staff, please pardon my voice. I was holding off speaking before the council, figuring I'd just wait until I healed up more, but something has occurred that compelled me to speak to you this evening. Just over a week ago, I lost a very dear friend. His name was Edward Royce Sr. Many of you may have met him on vacations. He was a longtime member of the board of the Water District. He served at various times as council member and mayor of the city of Stanton. You probably know his son more recently than he, because his son has been, up until a couple of years ago, a representative in Congress in 39th District, Ed Royce Jr. And Ed would always joke and say, "But I'm the real Ed Royce." He was a founding member of the political group that's been working with the Republican Party in Orange County. And he was a veteran of World War II. He loved to tell stories about the things that he did coming ashore on Normandy Beach week after D-Day. He was among the first American soldiers to liberate the Nazi concentration camp at Dachau. Again, I apologize for my voice, but I needed to speak about him tonight and ask Mr. Mayor if you would adjourn this meeting in the memory of Edward Royce Sr. Thank you.
Nicholas Dibbs.
Scratch the shirt. Scratch it.
Mayor Jones, members of the council, my name's Nicholas Dibbs. And Charles, thank you for coming up to give that tribute to Ed Royce Sr., who invited me on a Water District tour years ago, MODOC tour. I do want to, in keeping with expressing condolences, I would like to express my condolences to the family and friends of a beloved 10-year-old who, according to news reports, allegedly committed suicide a few days ago as a fifth grader, and the news reports said something about bullying. And when the investigation is done, we'll know more. But I, as a teacher and an educator, I have tried to dedicate my life to helping students, helping the community to improve, and it broke my heart to hear of the news report of the death of this 10-year-old who, as I said, allegedly committed suicide due to bullying. And back in May, since May and June of this year, I've come to this council and the school board at Garden Grove Unified to provide information of the increased need to have suicide prevention and mental health programs. And since 2008 to 2017, children being hospitalized for serious mental illnesses has rose to 87% from 2008 to 17 here in Orange County. According to the latest year of data from the Annual Conditions of Children in Orange County report. I've provided this council and members of the school board with documentation, resources, outlining different ways to help students with these issues and to help improve our community, because as you know, our students are only in school about 6 hours or so, 7 hours a day, and then other times they're in the community. Now, back in May on Memorial Day, a 12-year-old, as I reported to you back then, tried to commit suicide. So I have just been trying my best to provide the council and the school board members with resources. And I had the pleasure at the beginning in August of being a gold sponsor of the football team, gold sponsor, stadium sponsor of Pacifica High School's football team, my alma mater, which included a one-page ad and a banner. And I decided to dedicate the ad and the banner to mental health awareness and to provide some websites. And unfortunately, my banner was included in the agreement, but unfortunately, the district would not allow me to display it after it was displayed one time. And it's the same as the ad that was approved by the district, so I don't know where they were coming from. But in the interest of providing awareness to you and to the citizens of Garden Grove, I'd like to just briefly display that banner with the websites that are critical to the needs of students and parents, mainly parents. So my good friend Tom will hold this up. So we see here a website. I want them to show it on this camera here, please. I'm in the camera, but they're not showing it.
Changed it.
Okay.
Thank you, Cameron.
So
Thanks, Jeff.
Move up. Okay, so the first website is savethekids.us, then internetmatters.org, thejoyfulchild.org, who was established by, in memory of Samantha Runyon, by her mother, established that website. TomKirsting.com, drlisastroman.com, socialemotionalpause.com, and suicideispreventable.org with the 800 phone number of where people can call to get help regarding suicides. Thank you. So the district told me I couldn't, the banner was displayed at the September 21st game, and then at the homecoming game, I was not allowed to hang that banner for some unknown reason, which is a violation, alleged violation of my First Amendment right. But in any case, I wanted the public to see this, and but the Garden Grove PD, when I went to pick up this banner on Friday night at Bolsa Grande Stadium, all I did was walk into the bleachers, go to the board chair of the club, of the football booster club, to get that banner. And an SRO officer and a police officer from Garden Grove PD told me to leave. And so it isn't the fault of the police, it's that the administrators asked them to come over. And so there's an abuse of power there, and it's not the fault of the police officers, but rather the administrators at GGUSD. But I do want to bring this to the attention of the police chief and the mayor and the council so that you can prevent future abuse of our police officers who should not be used as political pawns. Thank you, or bullying. Thank you.
Maureen Blackman.
Good job. It's true.
Robin made me do this. Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. I wanted to take a moment to thank the volunteers at the Garden Grove Neighborhood Association's first cleanup effort. It touched our heart to see 25 volunteers pitch in to make a statement about their desire for our community to be a cleaner city. Many more voiced concerns to volunteer, but their schedules didn't allow it, and they said that they would participate next time. It felt so good to turn trash into laughs and disorder into order, even if it was on a small scale. Public Works provided so much support to make this happen. I think they realized when we showed up with a couple of busted up rakes that maybe we were in over our heads. Without Mark Ladney, Bill Murray, Raymond, and Casey, this cleanup would have never really accomplished what it did. They taught us how to reach in, even with gloves, that we shouldn't reach in because there was hypodermic needles and EpiPens in there as well. Officer Brian from the Special Resource Team stopped by to show support. They've been working on this area for many years, and I think it actually made Brian feel good to see the effort and the turnout at the end. Thank you, Public Works. Thank you, volunteers. Thank you, Code, for your efforts as well. Social media had its fair share of comments, mostly supportive, but there was a few whys. Our answer was because it needed it and it felt good. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes oral communications. We're going to recess and go to successor agency. Madam Clerk, would you like to call roll?
Member Bridegham?
Here.
Member O'Neill?
Here.
Member Klopfenstein?
Here.
Member Kim Wen? Vice Chair Bowie?
Yeah.
And Chair Jones?
Here.
And Member Tu-Ha Nguyen is absent.
Okay, we already did oral communications simultaneously with City Council. We have 2 consent items. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Call the vote.
Motion received, 6 yes votes.
Any matters? Seeing none, we will adjourn to the sanitary district. John, take it away.
Clerk could call roll for the sanitary district.
Member Bowie?
Yeah.
Member Jones?
Here.
Member Klopfenstein? Here. Member Kim Wen? Here. Vice President Bridegham?
Here.
President O'Neill?
Here.
And Member Tu-Ha Nguyen is absent.
Thank you. We held oral communications simultaneously with council. We have 3 consent items. Entertain a motion on that?
So moved.
I'd like to pull item
Okay, sorry.
2A, and then I'd move to
second.
the balance, however that works. Sorry, I forgot.
Thank you. We'll pull 2A, and we have a motion and a second on the balance. Call for the vote. And now we'll go to item...
Motion received, 6 yes votes.
We'll
Sorry.
Sorry, my fault. We'll go to item 2A.
Item 2A is award a contract to AKM Consulting Engineers for consultant design services of the Partridge Lift Station Improvements Project number 7849, and Mr. Maria is here to give the report.
Okay. Yes, tonight, thank you, Mr. Mayor, actually the members of the board and council members. Tonight, we're looking to go ahead and award a contract to AKM to design a grinder and put together construction documents to convert, basically a preliminary design to a final design for one of our pump stations. It's located just outside of Thunderbird Mobile Home Park, and we call that the Partridge Lift Station. This particular amount of the contract is going to be for $157,000, and we expect that to be done within the next 6 months. That concludes my report. I'm available if you have any questions.
Murray, any questions?
I asked for this to be pulled because it happens to be in my district, and I actually asked Public Works to do like a public service announcement, which they did back in March and redid again, for flushable wipes. They're not flushable, so please don't flush them. This is causing us hundreds of thousands of dollars in repairs, and I would just like to highlight that, make that known. If you guys see that post, if you could repost and share, because it's not the only place I'm imagining where folks are flushing down these wipes. So just want to make sure that we highlight that, and anytime we have items like this that we can help promote something, that we should take advantage of that. And so I just want to thank Public Works for all their hard work and make sure that we spread the word that toss, don't flush. Move to approve.
Thank you. Thank you. A motion and a second.
Second it.
Call for the vote.
She's here all week.
Motion received, 6 yes votes.
Thank you. We'll go to items for consideration. We have one item tonight. Do we have a staff report?
Item 3A is award a contract to Paulus Engineering, Inc. for project number 7824, Ward Street Sewer Line Improvement, and Mr. Maria is here to give the report.
Thank you, Ms. Pomeroy, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board. Tonight, the board is asked to award a contract to Paulus Engineering, Incorporated, for the construction of about 820 feet of sewer line on Ward Street. The project will increase the diameter of the existing sewer lines as called for in the city's capacity assurance plan. The goal of this work is to minimize sewer overflows. The sewer lines will be constructed in Ward from McFadden to Davitt and in Ward from Bolsa, just extending about 200 feet north of Bolsa. This work will include the replacement of 7 manholes and will be done at a cost of nearly $720,000. The work to be done will cause minor traffic delays in the area, and regardless of the efforts of staff and the contractor to minimize those impacts, just the sheer nature of closing the traffic lanes in order to facilitate the construction will cause traffic congestion. Staff received and opened 6 bids on September 19th and determined that Paulus Engineering was the lowest responsible bidder. Should the council decide to award the contract tonight, the contractor can begin work in early December and should be complete by April of next year. This project was included in this year's capital improvement plan and will be paid for with sewer funds. This concludes staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Any questions of staff? No? I'll entertain a motion.
Move it.
Call for the vote.
Motion received, 6 yes votes.
Thank you. At this time, any matters from members? Nope. Okay, we'll adjourn to the next sanitary district meeting, November 26th at 5:30. Back to council.
All right, we'll reconvene City Council, going on to consent items. Recommended that 2A through 2F be acted on simultaneously unless anyone would like to pull an item.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull 2B, please.
Okay. Or not. Or not 2B. Can I get a motion for the balance?
I'll move the balance.
Second it.
Stephanie started
Motion received, 6 yes votes.
Okay. 2B.
Hello?
You want to report?
Well, yes, not really. I'm in looking through these, reviewing the agenda items. I see, buying a riding mower for Public Works, $29,000. And it just hit me like a red flag, $29,000 for a riding mower. So I went to the John Deere website to see because there's no model number or what accessories, or I'm assuming for that price we're getting a trailer and some accessories and whatnot, but the most expensive riding mower I could find on the John Deere website was $8,000. And you have to get the quotes, and this is the good guy price by going in with the bulk thing, I guess, that the cities do together. So the report didn't have a model number, didn't list any accessories. Are we getting a trailer? It was really incomplete as far as the report goes, at least in my opinion. So I got a little heartburn when I saw the $28,780 price tag. I'm not disputing it. I'm sure there's probably a warranty and other stuff to get it up there, but do we know what model it is? I know they had the Zero Turn 700 series, which was the big commercial one. That was just under $8,000, the one I saw on the website, and that's to the general public.
I don't have any of that information off the top of my head and
it wasn't in the staff report, so I just would be very uncomfortable voting on that until we get some more detail on that.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Continue that one, or just ask to bring that back to the next meeting then?
Certainly.
Is there any time pressure on it?
No.
Okay. All right. What's that? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That concludes consent items. We'll go on to commission committee matters. We do have a vacancy on the Admin Board of Appeals. I would like to nominate James Webb to fill that vacancy.
I'd second that nomination. James is from District 2, and both Councilman Brightigan and myself have spoken with him, and he's capable and able and willing to serve on that.
He didn't apply, right? I don't see his name on the list.
Yeah, I think this came in recently, because we didn't fill it.
Is that permissible? I thought we have deadline for application. Did he apply before the deadline?
No, actually, the application is for the purpose of giving people allowing them to express an interest, but there is no hard and fast rule. There is no statute.
They've done that before on other
Yeah.
commission seats.
That's correct. So we can make an appointment before we notify the public of the vacancy.
Right.
But once that notification period has completed, then anyone can submit their application.
I have no reservation. I'm sure and I agree that he is a very good candidate for the position. Just want to make sure that I understand it, because in the past, for other commission, we are very strict in terms of comply to a window. If you miss that window, you will not be considered. So I just want to make sure that we apply the rule fairly across the board. If this is a rule, then I think that we should, from now on, then I think that will be the rule from now on. But I want to make sure that this is just not for this fulfillment of the vacancy.
This does just complete the term.
Right, but I mean, so I just want to make sure for the public record that there is no deadline for applying for commission, because many of us have been advised otherwise. In fact, when I applied for one of the commissions years ago, I was told that I missed the window and I would not be eligible for putting my name on the list. So just want to make sure that that is the correct understanding of the rule. Can you reconfirm that, Omar?
Well, I'm not aware of any specific rule other than the government code requirement for vacancies. Now, all the commissions serve for a period of 2 years. And after that term, then there is a new recruitment, and the city and the mayor can then make new nominations for new 2-year terms. This is not that situation. The situation is today is that we have a vacancy. The notice of vacancy was published, so we've complied with that. And so at this point, the mayor can make, nominations, and then the city council can appoint. So there's a difference between the end of the 2-year term and filling vacancies, and that's
Okay.
what we're dealing with today.
That's the difference. We
Yes.
just want, to make sure we understand the rule, right? And also the public understand the rule before that there is no, that we don't apply it differently at different time.
And, excuse me, Councilmember Bowie, also, the purpose of the deadline is just so that we can list the appointments on the agenda timely for the 2-year term.
Okay.
More discussion? Okay, we've got a motion and a second. We'll call the vote.
Motion received, 6 yes votes.
Okay, that takes us on to items for consideration. We have 2 listed on the agenda. Item 4A is consideration and approval of the Parks, Recreation, and Facilities Master Plan.
Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. It is my pleasure to present to you for approval the final draft of the Parks, Recreation, and Facilities Master Plan. The Community Services Department, alongside with the Public Works Parks Division, worked with consultant Richard Fisher Associates on a year-long process of data gathering, community engagement to help develop this plan. The Parks, Recreation, Facilities Master Plan is specifically designed to help guide the planning, maintenance, and rehabilitation of Garden Grove parks, the park amenities, and the recreational facilities for the next 15 years. Just to note that the park programming and park use policies are not addressed as part of this plan. Tonight, I'm happy to introduce Richard Fisher and Sue Lito of Richard Fisher Associates to give a brief summary on the findings and what the next steps are to create better parks for the Garden Grove community.
Thank you, John. Mayor and Council, it's my pleasure to come before you tonight as we hopefully are wrapping up what I think has been a very valuable, fairly lengthy experience of going out into your community to see what the citizens would like to see done over the next 10-year period with our parks and recreation programs and facilities. Just a quick comment first. I'd like to, in front of you, just like I did in front of the commission, commend your staff here. This is the 9th master plan that I have professionally led. Probably got the best support from your staff of any municipality or district that I have worked with over the last 25 years, probably. And I think it's a big investment of money and time to do something like this. And it's so critical to get support from the staff, and this staff has been the best of any I've worked with, and we certainly appreciate it, and I think the community will as well, as they are aware of that. I want to just do a very, very quick summary of what is obviously a pretty lengthy document, and just give you a very quick overview of the master plan itself. The goal was to create a framework for the planning, maintenance, and development and/or rehab of the Garden Grove parks and facilities. Its goal is also to provide a systematic and a prioritized approach to the implementation of parks and recreation projects, services, and programs which are based on the public's desire and the available budget. And finally, their goal is to also provide suggested costs which need funding to accomplish the park renovation work that's identified in this master plan. Just very quickly, we have finalized what you had in some components of a current park inventory and
system throughout the city. We're recommending this be posted on the city's website so the community can access this very easily. The following chart as well, I just have that in the presentation because this identifies in a matrix form what kind of facilities you have throughout the city. If somebody wants to look for tennis courts, they can go to this chart and determine which parks have that amenity. So we're also recommending that that be posted on the city's website. Let me take just a couple minutes to talk about our community outreach process, which we did in 2 different tiers. First, a comment that my experience is that park and recreation master plans are not a very threatening thing for the community. And as people are so busy with their personal lives, what their children have to get to different events, the commute of so many people in our cities and all, it's really tough to get the public to come to community outreach meetings. So we did a 2-tiered process, one of which was a web-based survey. This then gives access to every home in the city that has a computer, or they can go to a location where there is a computer if they don't have one. It was, we decided to extend it for a total of 11 weeks, which is the longest survey that I've done. It was done from December 9th to February 10th. It was available in English, in Spanish, in Vietnamese, and in Korean. We were able to accomplish 978 responses, which is way beyond what statistically we needed to have for a highly credible survey. However, staff and ourselves were kind of targeting for 1,000, and we came just short of that. But I think that was a very good number. Real quickly, the results of that can be analyzed in a number of different ways or variables. The ethnicity of the person who is responding, what electoral district or council district they reside in, the years they've resided in the community, 4 different age categories of people in the household, single versus multiple occupants in the household, if there are children under 18 in the household, if there are occupants that are over 65, renters versus homeowners, and income levels in 4 different categories. And actually, with the software of that survey, one can sit down and analyze the results in any of those different categories, which hopefully will be very useful to the city. One of the good things is it turned out that there was a very consistent input between the survey we did and the community outreach meetings. I think this gives strong credibility to both of the processes that we used. The priorities in the survey, the priorities for city funding were preserving open space, and as we talked about that again even today, we think the community really interprets that as preserving green space throughout the city. Those of us who are in park design and urban space planning and things have a little different connotation of what open space might be than I think the community has, and I think they're thinking that preserving green space throughout the city was the most significant support. It was closely followed by modernizing our existing parks and then improving maintenance within our existing parks. Also, there was a strong request to construct new pathways and pedestrian walkways within the existing park system. Many people in the community want to have that form of recreation or exercise activity. Another item that came to the front was the park restroom building's unavailability for family use while at the park is a very consistent and significant concern throughout the city. There is also that funding should focus on making improvements to the existing park system and not on the purchase and development of new parks. I don't think many of us went into this process for Garden Grove being aware of that. And I think if there's nothing else, that makes this process a very valuable process. It gives you as the leaders in the community a chance to perhaps refocus a little bit or at least think about what the community is saying. There was a strong consensus from the community that parks and facilities are in need of renovation and a consistently higher level of maintenance. There is also a strong concern about deferred and low maintenance levels and the low budget levels for capital improvements for the parks and to fund park maintenance.
Let's talk for just a second about programs. Publicly, the comments came in that they're generally pleased with the current programs and services that are offered by your Community Services Department, particularly for the 5 to 12 age group. There was some feedback that it's not adequately serving teens. I think as we dug into that further, we think in a lot of cases, parents aren't aware of what's available for teens. There is actually a pretty good volume of programs and services. And there was input about a request for more programs and services for working adults. Combined, the city and the Garden Grove Unified School District recreation programs and services are doing a good job of meeting community needs. Another interesting thing that I think you'll find through this input process is, although I think you know that your public here are very active and independent, many people regularly use the parks, but for their own recreational activities, not necessarily to participate in city-organized programs. And I think as we think through that further, we think a lot of your newer residents in the community may have come from a part of the world where they weren't able to look to the government for recreation programs, and so their lifestyle doesn't focus on it as much as many communities do. Again, it's not a negative thing at all, but I think it's interesting to be aware of that. Of no surprise, I think to you, the citywide special events are well-rounded and bring a high level of community involvement and I think community respect. The senior center buildings are over capacity and the community wants more programs, so we've got a bit of a dilemma there. Let's talk for just a moment about recommendations. We feel the city should prioritize more city budget allocations for improving the park infrastructure, including new irrigation systems, walkways, picnic facilities, and ADA accessible playgrounds. And there was a lot of emphasis on, as we renovate the playgrounds here, they'd like them to be unique and not all somewhat similar. Higher level of parks and facilities maintenance. We heard that over and over again. More accessible ADA furnishings and equipment throughout our park system. General upgraded improvements to sports facilities, and resolve the public restrooms vandalism issue to allow increased availability for families when they're using the parks. In addition, add new park trees to create an age diversity with the trees that are in our park system here. They all tend to be pretty much the age that the park was originally built, and we need to renew our urban forest, or they all are old in their age, and we'll see a strong deterioration of the trees, which are important to parks. Develop park security lighting standards. There was a lot of input about increasing lighting in the parks to improve security, and our recommendation is before you launch into that, we ought to work on providing some lighting standards of what is it we're trying to achieve, so we are somewhat uniform as we do that throughout the park system. Budget for and prepare an analysis of the conditions of all the park architectural features to determine a little more precisely what renovations and expansions are necessary to better serve the community. That was not a part of this master plan process, so we strongly recommend that you retain a consultant to do that work. We would recommend you consider revision to the General Plans Chapter 9, which is the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space chapter of that, because it currently has a goal of 2 acres per 1,000 population by year 2030, which means 350 acres of parkland in the city of Garden Grove. We currently have 124, and the community is saying, we don't want more park acreage, we want nicer parks that we already have. So I think that deserves to be revisited. And we would recommend that you authorize your city staff to recommend what prioritization methodologies are used as you move forward into staff bringing forward projects for you for consideration. We could look at doing like improvements such as playground equipment replacements and do it in multiple parks, that maybe there's some cost efficiency in doing that. Or maybe you want to do everything that needs to be done on a given park so you don't have to go back for more improvements within a several number of years. Perhaps it needs to be spread through the different districts in the city somewhat. So there's a number of options, and staff thinks they would like to take a shot at that, and then they could bring that forward to you. As a part of the process, and it actually was amended as we were involved in the master plan, we were requested and have prepared a site-specific plan, and we were assigned to take a look at Garden Grove Park and Sports and Recreation Facility. So very quickly, there is an image up there on the wall. It would be a significant renovation and reorganization of almost the entire park. The idea being, I think you would get more efficient use of the acreage that you have there. It would upgrade safety improvements in there. We think there may be an opportunity to visit a contract constructed and run soccer facility. So this was an example of, I think, what could be done within your park system. This one is much more extensive than typically we would do at the master plan level, but a lot of very exciting things that could be done with this park through that. And that concludes my broad brush overview of this, and Sue and I could answer questions, hopefully, that you might have.
There's the noise you were talking about. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation and all the work and time that you guys have put into this, and all the community engagement, everything that's gone with it over the last, whatever it's been, year or two?
Year and a half.
Year and a half, yeah. Yeah, thank you. Any questions? My big question is, where do we go? What's next? Like, so now we've got the plan. What's the next step, and what are the chances that we could actually implement at least a fraction of this?
Right. So like Richard mentioned, I think one of the things we're going to start looking at, and one of the recommendations was just the infrastructures currently at the parks, more specifically the playgrounds. I think not only from the community, but from, obviously the plan and from the Public Works Department, it seems to be on kind of a high priority list to really work on getting updated playgrounds. Has been, in some of these places, some of the parks have been over 20 years that playgrounds haven't been replaced, and that's way beyond their lifespan. So we're gonna sit down and look and prioritize that to begin with, and then as we continue to kind of just dive into the plan a little more, look at the numbers, look at the budgets that we receive for our capital improvement projects. Then we'll start prioritizing other parts and other amenities within the park. One of the things that they mentioned is a walking trail. I know has been highly successful at Eastgate Park, that we just recently put one in within the last couple of years. So, really identifying a park that could use that, and then from that point on, just kind of continue to prioritize what is needed.
If I could make just one additional comment, one of the items that was such strong emphasis from the community was the infrastructure. Replacing irrigation systems is not very exciting, and the public doesn't particularly appreciate the cost of doing that. But our professional experience would suggest if you don't prioritize and replace your irrigation systems, you're never going to see your parks improve. It's just so critical to the well-being of the park that you have to have good irrigation. And as we see the cost of water continuing to increase year after year after year, the technology now for irrigation in our parks compared to when these parks were built is dramatic. And so I think you could realize some real savings.
I'd like to jump in and kind of piggyback on that, the importance of irrigation, not only underwatering but overwatering, as we are battling our threat from mosquitoes in this city, and obviously them being a nuisance, but also potentially deadly from West Nile virus and so forth. I think irrigation has to be at the top of that list, because we know that overwatering leads to an overabundance and a breeding site for mosquitoes, and then people are trying to enjoy the park and they can't because they're getting bit up by mosquitoes. So I would definitely say that is one of the most important things, although not as romantic and exciting as some of the other options. I think it's a necessity not only just for the betterment and the beautification of the park, but public safety as well. I also wanted to make mention of the walkways and the paths. I remember when I was on Parks and Recreation Commission, we talked about that path that went in at Eastgate Park. Is there a particular park or something you look for when deciding upon where one of those would go? I know they're not cheap. So do you have something in mind, or is that something that we could see in multiple parks, or does it have to be something specific?
I think what we generally have is, our staff observations, both Public Works and city staff. I mean, I can right off the bat tell you that Garden Grove Park is probably one of the parks that has a high volume of park users that would definitely benefit from some sort of trail or pathway that would help kind of lead to to the use of those a little bit more often. We have them right now kind of sometimes going on the street, and then there is some walkways through there, but it's not a good connected system. So it's mostly by our observations, and as we kind of look to prioritize projects like walkways, our staff will be out there kind of monitoring the use of the parks.
Okay.
I would also comment, if I may, I think also staff would observe is which parks have some residual space around the perimeters
Sure.
that would be logical for walking
Safety
and safety.
component,
Yeah.
everything, sure.
Exactly.
Another key component in here is the park patrol. Obviously, that's extremely important. Can you talk a little bit about that program and how possibly going forward we could expand it, and what their role would be, and how much weight is behind that title?
Yes. So our Park Patrol program is a program where we have from the community services side, it's more of a customer service and safety component that we use to really connect with the users of the park. On the customer service side, the Park Patrol officers out there kind of informing the community of the different rules and policies that we have, or any if they find anything that they're doing that is outside of those rules and policies, they try to educate them. In the past, we've had them where we had a kind of like a full-time Park Patrol ranger out there, and his title kind of led to having kind of a little bit more authority and citation powers.
That's what I was going to ask about, citations.
Which was like more of an enforcement. But unfortunately, they're no longer full-time employees. So with the current title that they have now, they're more of the, customer service, kind of informant. But also, they do work closely with our police department. They're kind of the first line at our parks when there's an issue. There's sometimes issues that can be handled by our Park Patrol officer, and there's times where we need our police support, and they make that determination. Yeah.
And just to add to that, I think also our Park Patrol staff, what they do also during the weekends is with all of our picnic shelter rentals, as well as any other activities happening at our city parks, they are able to let us know if there's any issues within the infrastructure as well. So if there's anything that's damaged or vandalized or that needs immediate attention. So there's definitely that also side to their everyday work that we don't always have the opportunity to be out at the city parks every day. And so by having them out there, they're able to tell us from a programming standpoint if there's any issues that need to be addressed, which kind of lines up with this, because if there is playground that is vandalized or that is deteriorating, they're also able to report that back to staff. So having them out there more frequently would definitely help with getting those type of reports to management.
Well, I definitely think it was interesting reading this report and seeing the common interest shared between different groups, Public Works, PD, Council, the community. There was a lot of shared interests. Obviously, we talked about the irrigation, overall maintenance, the restroom issues, lighting. I think a lot of that comes down to the safety component of our parks, and obviously ADA, for me especially, is a key element to all of this. So I really appreciate Richard Fisher and Associates for all the hard work you put in. I enjoyed meeting with you and having an opportunity to talk to you about the parks in my district and in the city. And thank you to staff for your outreach and education efforts with the survey and so forth. I think, not to end on a down note, but I was a little disappointed that this wasn't attached in the city, in our agenda for this council meeting. I really think that with the community having an opportunity to participate in the survey and in the community outreach meetings, and then not have this attached in the agenda, I think kind of left them at a disadvantage. I would have liked to have heard from the residents of my district and the community if they had any additional input. So that was a little bit of a tough pill to swallow. But otherwise, it's a lengthy and weighty report, and I appreciate the diligent efforts.
I think my closing comment, if I could, Mayor, was, you know, parks are such an important investment in every community, and the fact that we got feedback from a lot of different departments, I think is very appropriate because we're all in this together.
Yes, thank you.
John and then Kim.
Mr. Mayor, you mentioned about places to start. For me, I know from what I've heard from my constituents is the first thing we need to do, a place to start would be better lighting, security, getting the bathrooms open, because our people aren't using the parks because they can't use the bathroom. So we need to figure that out, be able to have the resources to get the bathrooms open, which requires infrastructure and also lighting, security, and the park patrol. So I think that's a key component of starting, because if we can at least get people to go back to the parks right now the way they are, it'll be a start, because right now they're not going because there's other things that are keeping them away. So I just want to throw that in.
I have a lot to say, I'm sorry. So for me, I just want to first say that, not that I expected more, this is really great, has a lot of detail in there, but reading it cover to cover, a couple of notes, just observation on the report, and then I'm going to get into the remarks that I have about the actual plan, is that it's very redundant. I would have liked to see sections combined, and so that the information isn't said more than once, and then we maybe would have highlighted the differences. So if the community, the staff, PD, Public Works agreed on something, that should have just been like, that's the thing that we agree on. If the community had something that they preferred that other departments, police, Public Works didn't say, then we highlight that. Because this chapters we're reading the same thing over and over again. And then the way that the parks and facilities are broken out, I wish we would have done a profile instead and had all that information in one place, because I had to keep switching back and forth between where we do a little narrative about the park or facility and then where the image and then the recommendations are. So it's not all at once. I would have liked to see like a profile per park, facility, etc. So those are just like technical me being anal about how the report is structured, like who's gonna read this, right? Like who is the audience for this? I would imagine this being something that the council members would be reading, the public would be reading. For staff, you guys should have workflows, timelines, charts, more technical. So this should have been a little bit more of like a story, take me on a journey, right? Because as I was reading it, my notes were, are we gonna get another consultant? Are we going to set the standards? Are we going to do this? And then my answers were questioned by the time I finished. But it just didn't read like a timeline kind of thing. So the organization of the plan itself, I think, could have been done a little bit better. But it's amazing. I love it. Thank you. A couple other things. I won't stress too much on Park Patrol since Councilmember Kloffenstein already mentioned that. But I will say that a few months ago, I did request information regarding our staffing, future staffing. I was told it was going to be part of this. It's not in here, so I'm a little disappointed because I was urging that we need to hire more park patrol. That's one thing that I'm hearing from my residents a lot of. Months ago, maybe last year, I think, I requested that restrooms be open because it's not fair to our residents that they can't use the facilities that they contribute tax dollars to. They were open momentarily, and then they were shut down again because people were abusing that, specifically the transients. And then I was told by Public Works that porta potties were installed. That's great, but those are not, I don't like to use porta potties, right, unless I really have to. So that, and then a couple of other things that I would want to highlight. The trends that were mentioned in the report are trends that we all know. I was talking about we have an increase in aging population, but where? My district is very young, so to me, putting more senior activities in my district doesn't really make that much sense. So I wanted to see that level of detail and break up here. And then I saw that there was a lot of mention of dog parks, and then there's a consideration of adding it to Hare Park, right? Hare? Is that where we're thinking? Yeah, right? So I've actually been to every facility that, except for Hare, I think, is the only one that we didn't get to see. So of the 21 I've seen and walked and looked at all 20, minus Hare. I'd like to see dog parks everywhere, and if we're not going to do that, then where we're putting walking trails, have poop stations and water stations. So we don't have to necessarily carve out a piece of the park for dogs, but make them available. so that folks walking their dogs can use those trails and have their dogs with them, just have the rules, leash, poop bags, whatever. And then I don't know that it's a matter of looking at which parks are being utilized the most, but why are parks being underutilized, right? So I think we have to change our framework. Garden Grove Park is being used by a school. It has more facilities. It's larger. But about the other parks, the neighborhood parks, why aren't they being accessed? Parking's an issue, lighting, safety. Woodbury Park, which has applied for a grant, and I'm hoping that we get. But there's issues with that park specifically. So what are those issues? What could we do to draw out more residents? The report states that individuals or families with higher incomes leave our city to go to other parks in other cities because they're nicer. But that means low-income families and individuals are using our parks for XYZ reason. They can't afford a gym pass, so they use our exercising equipment. They can walk. There's no parking, so they can walk to those parks. That's why they use those parks. What activities are happening around those parks? In my district in particular, for Woodbury Park, there's a folklorico group that meets at a house and practices there. Is there a space at the park that they could use to have their practices there instead? That way more students could apply for that program and learn how to dance, etc. Here we see students from Grove High School practicing their skits, other dance activities that they're doing in that little space. So things like that, like what would draw them out if we had a designated dance or skit practice area, etc. There's mention of creating a permanent stage at one of the parks for summer concerts, which I don't particularly agree with because I've been stressing the fact that I think those summer concerts need to be spread out through the city, which you have complied with somewhat for me and put them at the Elks. But I think we need to look, Village Green is a central area where maybe those summer concerts should be at rather than just making them at the West End, because that limits who's going to go to those concerts. So if we don't want to do them sporadically in the 3 areas of the city, then let's just do it in the middle, right? Sorry guys, I have a lot of comments. The other thing is I saw mention of like maybe a snack bar for people accessing the walking trails, things like that. Why don't we do food trucks? So that way we don't have to pay for staff to be there to manage those snack bars. We could do food truck events or something creative that's not going to cost us more money. Parklets. We don't want to increase our parks. We want to make sure that the ones that we have are being used and that they're being improved. But we could do something creative with parklets that only are open for like a week and then move it around the city or something like that. We had something like that outside of Park Code. I don't know where it is. I haven't seen it anywhere.
In front of the gym.
So, I mean, moving that around and not just leaving it stationary because it's going to get no one's going to go and check it out, right? So if we move it and let people know where it's going to be, then maybe it'll be used and activated again. Irrigation. I know it doesn't sound sexy and it sounds lame, but it's really important. One of the things, part of my Public Works 101 classes that I've been taking every couple of weeks for a couple hours with the Public Works Department is that a lot of I'm going to get this wrong, so Bill can correct me at some point in the future, but the piping and all the materials and equipment that are needed to fix are so outdated that our Public Works Department have to kind of like shimmy and shift and make up to repair because it's so old that these parts are not being made anymore. That's a huge problem. What happens when there's a major break or huge, just the water just blows up and can't work anymore, right? Like we're not going to buy those parts, and the Public Works can only shift things for a certain amount of time and for immediate fixes, right? So that's a huge problem to me. I think irrigation needs to be a really big priority. I was standing maybe for like 15 minutes at Grove Park with them, and I got bit by like 3 mosquito. I had like 4 bites everywhere. I was there for 15 minutes. I joked with Maria, I'm like, God, now I probably have Zika or something. So clearly there's standing water. There's uneven grass and pavement, which allows for standing water, which is probably why I was getting bit like crazy. And then probably my last comment, I'm sorry. Census. This is my plug for the census. It's important that we have an accurate count of our residents because that's money being left on the table. If we have a better count, that's going to show that we have more residents. It's going to give us more demographic information, which will help with parks. And then the last section where there was a lot of grants, that was amazing. Everyone knows I'm the grant girl, so I love that. We need to be applying for all of those. If we need to get someone part-time to just start cranking those grants out, let's make that priority number 1 because that's money we could be saving and using. So that's what we need to do. We need to get a grant person in here and have that be their full-time gig. because it's not just writing the application, gathering the information, the data, monitoring it, and then implementing it, and then most of the time you have to give reports back out on how you're using that money. So I think grants is just, you guys know, for the last 3 years I've been ringing the same song. So I think that's all I'll say for now. Sorry.
Okay. Boy, between Stephanie and Kim, I think they have said them all, so I don't think I need to go into details any further. But just a couple points. I think staff have worked very hard and have done good jobs. We have been reaching out to the communities, to the residents for the last years and a half, and I too I remember staff bidding on me, Councilmember Bui, we still haven't, received your response. Please do that. So thank you very much. And I do see staff have prioritized a couple of things like public restroom, public safety, which is a major concern to many of our constituents. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, I was at the festival on Garden Grove Boulevard, and a couple residents flagged me down and remind me that Councilman Bui, the public restroom at the Garden Grove Park have not been resolved, and a lot of us seniors, exercise very early in the morning, and we don't have restroom to use. When can we expect to have that turnaround? This report is very impressive. I like it a lot. You guys have done a tremendous job in inventory our parks, have identified a lot of issues that need improvement. But what I do not see is the time frame for it. Now, I know some of this is very difficult because we don't have the budget. We are relying on grants, so we cannot have any rough estimate. But I think the resident, after a year and a half, riding along with a lot of input, they expect to see something or some plan soon than just a 15 years master plan without any feel for when something will be done. So I really like to staff to identify the low-hanging fruit and try to come up with some estimate. For example, the restroom. We know every district, every people that we ask, that is their number one concern, and that doesn't take millions to do. It just takes some creativity to come up with a solution to address the vandalism and other people misusing it. So I really hope that staff will focus on that and the low-hanging fruit, get it moving so that our residents just don't sit there and say, geez, they have us going through the roller coaster, filling out our inputs, and then we just have a beautiful report and 50-year master plan and nothing happened. So that is what I would like to do. Also, I would like to echo with Council Member or Mayor Pro Tem Stephanie mentioned earlier. When we have something that are very important, master plan for like this one, I really think that we should let the public a chance to digest it, understood that many of them have been going through a lot of community meetings, and so they've been educated about this, but they do not see the final report, how it looked like, what's in it. So I think before when we present it to the city council, we should publish this, and give them plenty of time to review it. I think that will show that we are transparent, and we take their input and their works very seriously. So this would be perfect. This is almost perfect, but it would be perfect if we could publish this a week or 2 weeks ahead of time so the public can see the final product. And they would like to see, we would be able to chime in to say, hey, this is good. This is 95% great. I just want to add a few more, sand into it, and that would be perfect for me.
I don't have much to say other than what you guys have all covered. I would like to see, you can't really build anything without going first to having a strong foundation and a found base. And like the gentleman said, our infrastructure is kind of the key. The irrigation, the lighting, and the bathrooms. Those are the baseline infrastructure things that we really need to address. And honestly, we can't do anything until we get that resolved. So I would really like to see within the next year some kind of a plan to resolve these issues. The bathrooms have been a big issue, getting them locked up at a certain time, so obviously we don't get campers in there, and getting them opened at a certain time so the public can use them. Fixing our irrigation, as Councilman Nguyen said, and the lighting. We need a plan for the lighting, not just put bigger lights up. What are we trying to accomplish with this lighting? Are we trying to, I think you articulated it very well. You kind of have to have a plan for that before you design it. So I'd like to see that prioritized, and let's get on that. Let's not waste time, because we can't build anything on until we handle those 3 items first. So I'm hopeful that we can see something within a year and see get the ball rolling. But that's it.
I just want to commend staff for all the tireless effort and hard work that they put into it, and our consultants and everyone in the community who took time out of their busy days to actually engage and get involved in this process. This obviously, it is what it is. This is a master plan. This is just a tool to go out and, as Councilmember Bowie said, take inventory of what we have and to address, to identify what we need. Now the next step obviously is to go out and roll up our sleeves, find funding, get creative, and try and make as much of this happen as soon as we possibly can. I trust that that's what we're going to proceed to do. So I want to commend you for getting to this point, that we at least have a document now that we can take on the road, go apply for grants, go contemplate budget decisions and whatnot, and find ways together to get this funded and get this done, because we deserve to have nice parks, and I believe we will. I don't think when's the last time we've done a parks master plan?
We've actually never had a parks
Yeah.
master plan. This is our
Right.
city's first, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So great first step. Now we've got a plan, we know where we're at, and that's the first step to moving forward and making things change, and I believe we will. So thank you so much for all that.
Mayor and colleagues, can I have a question for you and maybe for staff? We all received a letter from the neighborhood association asking to see if we could table it for the following council meeting if there is no, if this is not a time-sensitive issue for us to vote on today. Is that something that we could entertain? That's number one. And if we cannot entertain that, let's just say that we vote to approve this master plan today. If some of the public people would like to address certain thing in the report, do we still have time to do that, or we have to wait for another 15 years before we can go back to this again?
Just in all fairness, I don't think we have to delay. We could always add an addendum to the report, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So this is going to be a living document. So it's
I see.
Yeah, it's not it's
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 not
obviously
something
not
that
completely
once we-
saved in stone. Yeah.
Okay, so it's not something that once we vote on it, then that's it. We cannot go back and touch
Yeah,
it
no, that-
for another 15 years.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
This will be available
online.
It'll be available online, yes, and then anybody who wants a hard copy could be more than happy to give them come to the community services counter and we'll give them a copy.
Thank you.
Well, if that is the case, then I would move to approve it.
Second.
Sounds great. Call to vote.
Not,
Motion
now-
I'm
okay, go
sorry.
ahead.
Okay. Motion received, 6 yes votes.
Now that it is approved, when will it be available on the website with easy access to it, so resident can take a look at that.
We will work with our IT department to get it up tomorrow morning.
All right, okay.
Okay, that takes us on to item 4B. This is first reading and introduction of an ordinance adopting the 2019 California Building Standards Code with modifications.
Would you like me to read the title?
I can do it.
Okay.
Mayor, members of the City Council, this is introduction of an ordinance to adopt the California Building Standards Codes with some local amendments that are required because of specific situations within the city. Every 3 years, the California Building Standard Commission reviews, publishes, and enacts uniform codes for applicable to construction projects. And usually when we issue building permits, we make sure that the proposed construction and the permits comply with these codes. The city adopts the codes by reference so that we can have them within the municipal code, and we also include amendments that are specific to the city. Many times they're specific to Orange County as a whole. This year we have new amendments pertaining to the fire code because of the new contract with the Orange County Fire Authority, and then a lot of the other amendments are more administrative rather than substantive. So state law requires that we introduce the codes and we set a public hearing for their adoption. So if after first reading and introduction today, the city clerk will schedule a public meeting to your next meeting, we'll notify, publish in a newspaper notification of the public hearing, and then we will have a public hearing at your next meeting for actual adoption of these codes. So today is only an introduction and first reading, and someone needs to read the whole title. So, eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
Okay, I'll do it. This ordinance is entitled, An Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Garden Grove amending Title 18 of the Garden Grove Municipal Code and adopting by reference the following primary codes with certain amendments, deletions, and additions thereto. California Building Code 2019 edition, California Residential Code 2019 edition, California Electrical Code 2019 edition, California Mechanical Code 2019 edition, California Plumbing Code 2019 edition, California Energy Code 2019 edition, California Historical Building Code 2019 edition, California Fire Code 2019 edition, California Existing Building Code 2019 edition, California Green Building Standards Code 2019 edition, California Referenced Standards Code 2019 edition, and certain secondary codes, including the International Property Maintenance Code 2018 edition, as published by the International Code Council, and the International Swimming Pool and Spa Code 2018 edition, as published by the International Code Council.
Codes. Who knew there were so many codes?
I know.
Move approval.
Okay.
Call to vote.
All right. Motion received. 6 yes votes.
Okay, that takes us on to item 5, ordinance is presented for second reading. We do have one.
We do
And-
have one.
Go for it.
This is second reading of ordinance number 2909, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Garden Grove approving amendment number A025-2019, a zoning text amendment to section 9460 of the Garden Grove Municipal Code to add definitions for terms used in existing portions of Title IX pertaining to the flood hazard overlay zone to meet the minimum requirements of the National Flood Insurance Program.
Move approval.
Second, call to vote.
Motion received, 6 yes votes.
All right, thank you. Before we move on to matters, let's take a quick 5-minute break. And item 6, which is matters from council members, we do have one listed item as a presentation, and this is an update on code enforcement activity pertaining to short-term rentals in the city as requested by Mayor Pro Tem Kloffenstein.
Thank you. Yeah, I asked for an update kind of on where we are with short-term rentals, especially after last council meeting. We had several residents come out and show their frustrations over the short-term rental issue in their neighborhood. Obviously, there's short-term rentals throughout the city of Garden Grove, but it seems like there is we're just inundated in District 5 and the neighborhoods that back up against Anaheim and the tourism corridor there and the convention center. So I'm looking forward to hear the report from staff.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and members of the council. I've asked our Chief Building Official, David Dent, to compile some historic data relating to STR enforcement activities that has taken place over the last 18 months. And he's put together a brief PowerPoint presentation for you this evening, so I'm going to turn it over to David.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm here to give you guys a quick update on the short-term rentals and where we're at. So let's go ahead and get started. As you guys know, the short-term rental's been an issue for quite some time, a little over a year or so. About 18 months has been a priority for the community and for council. So we've transitioned through where the code enforcement department has been as far as neighborhood improvement, as a transition to building and safety. And I'm going to give you a quick overview of how it's progressed and where it's at now. So as you guys know, the status now is that there's a $1,000 a day violation for short-term rentals. Over the past year, what's been added to that is there's been an additional $1,000 fine that was able to be assessed due to also the advertising of short-term rentals. So collectively, the fine is up to $2,000, meaning that if we find a short-term rental and we verify that they've been advertising, then they'll get administered a $2,000 citation, $1,000 for each violation. So that's been the commonplace practice up till now. And really, as we got feedback from the community meetings, from council, from staff, from other departments, we all came to a consensus of what the issue of short-term rentals are. You know, they have a potential impact for the housing inventory. They're changing the neighborhood characteristics. Visitors are not aware of our local administered municipal codes, quality of life issues, trash and parking, and then just the local impact to our resort district. So we're very much aware of their impact. That's why, again, we also want to prioritize their enforcement. So far, basically to take you through the history of the short-term rental enforcement process, back in October 2017, we sent out a letter to basically all the public that had business licenses for rentals. So we found through that process it was a kind of hit and miss situation due to the fact that those that were operating illegally as short-term rentals didn't have licenses. So letters went to people that were actually in compliance with the code, and those that weren't seemingly missed that first outreach. So that was kind of what we saw as far as the feedback goes from that first portion of our enforcement. Soon after that, code enforcement transitioned to building and safety. We did a couple more outreaches to the community. We had a couple council presentations. We updated the website, and we presented the affidavit process. And shortly after, in February 2018, we actually started citing. There was a few citations initially, but due to the fact that the letters didn't quite issue the warning that we thought it would, a lot of those got rescinded, and we had to basically start the process over again with the new outreach. So the website, the 101 to council, some of those issues we felt were enough warning to begin to start citing those that were in violation of the short-term rental policy. We were doing that process, had a lot of man hours involved with it. So it took an officer somewhere between, I'd say, 2 to 3 hours to verify an actual short-term rental. That's checking the website, checking their advertisement, checking the pictures, checking Google, basically going to the neighborhood, verifying that property matches the advertisement. So that took about 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours per violation to verify. So shortly after the verification, a citation would follow. we came across at one of our code enforcement trainings that there's a possible assistance to that, which therein lies host compliance. Host compliance is a third-party software that actually takes care of that front-end work. They'll actually verify, search, and validate the short-term rentals in their address. Because as you guys know, if you go to Airbnb and you go to the site, the address isn't there. It just gives some moniker of close to Disneyland or, very centrally located. So it takes looking at pictures and then matching it up to, pools in the backyard or some other verification of what that is. Host compliance does that work for you. So back in January 2019, we opened up a pilot program in a portion of the area that we thought, or the city that was pretty highly inundated with short-term rentals. It proved to be saved us a lot of time. It basically would cut the time from 2 to 3 hours per officer down to about a half an hour or so just to collect the data and issue the citation. But prior to that software, through that whole year, starting from February 2018, we only did about 28 citations, based on the grunt work it took to really validate those short-term rentals, netting about 28,000 in fines collected for the year of just the manual labor prior to the program coming in place. So after January, we started the pilot program, and then by July 2019, we actually have full access to that, meaning that the software actually now gives us a whole citywide, verification or evaluation of where the short-term rentals are.
If I may also add, Mayor and Council, the software during the pilot program targeted D5. So during that assessment and that 3-month trial period, we want to determine if the software was usable, user-friendly, and did provide the information that would alleviate some of the man-hours that our individual code enforcement would have to take on for each individual address and each individual violation. So as a result of that, there were positive results in terms of streamlining our efforts during STR enforcement, and then it has shifted to citywide through the budgetary process where we're able to receive the approval through the budget process for implementation of the software citywide.
So since we've had the software and it basically did an overview of the whole city, currently there's 229 short-term rentals that it's really, I wouldn't say necessarily it's identified but hasn't verified yet. So the chart you're seeing is how we see it on our back end, per se. It'll not necessarily give an address unless you're clicking specifically on the dot, but as you can see, the compliant ones are land use that are actually motels or hotels. The non-compliant ones are the red dots. The unknown compliance status are blue, and not yet identified are the yellows. So they cycle through the various colors as the actual compliance software gives us the information that's necessary to issue the citations. So our investigation process, we receive the complaint. Normally it's either via our online service or through a counter or through a council inquiry, or the short-term rental software will provide us that. Then we go through the process of, and this is, like I said, this is taking you through what a combination of both the officers and the host compliance software does. Then after we receive the complaint, we just have to identify the owner. Chances are sometimes it's difficult to find the owner, or it's under a corporation of some sort, so we really have to dig down to who's going to actually receive this citation. After that, we do a field inspection, and then we verify that it is a short-term rental, it really exists, that somebody's there, and then we actually send out the notification. Normally, we're still in the kind of the soft gloves approach, so the first time is just to give them a warning, to let them know that that's not appropriate, it's a violation of Garden Grove. So we'll normally put a door hanger on, a door hanger that just identifies, and we say if you're the owner or if you're the person actually visiting, give us a call, let us make you aware of our municipal code and what you're in violation of. If that continues, then we'll normally send out a notice of violation via the mail, and then from there, once we verify that their ad is still up and they're still conducting the short-term rental activity, we issue the citations. And again, it's $1,000 for the land use and another $1,000 for advertising. So since we've had the host compliance software, that number 28 of citations has jumped up to 80. So we're able to cite at a higher rate once we find them, because a lot of the legwork is done initially. And today, we have about 160,000 in fines. But again, that's citations and that's issuing the fines, but giving the software the time that we've given it, citations actually hasn't really done what it's needed to do as far as the enforcement mechanism. Because as you know, if you have a very highly, let's say, productive short-term rental, if we're not finding at a rate of it's an everyday rate, then maybe in a weekend's time, they might have made that money back to keep doing what they're doing. So we're finding just, right now we're vetting through having full compliance of the whole city as to the challenges, and these are some of the challenges that we've come across. You know, first and foremost is unable to substantiate the address. Those that were in orange color were still ones that even host compliance is having trouble to identify if they are or aren't, you know, short-term rentals based on the advertisement. We have started to do door knocks. You know, when we do verify and we get the story of, I'm a friend from out of town, you know, and that, you know, I'm just staying here for the weekend, and we can't cite based on that information. So I'm looking at each of these challenges and finding a way to still streamline our code enforcement process to make sure that once we find somebody that they actually have stopped the activity. The affidavits, that hasn't been a very useful tool in the beginning, so it's not now. So we're still collecting them. They're still a valid identification from a standpoint from the neighborhood's perspective, so we still want them. But if people aren't showing up for the hearings to validate their affidavits because they don't want to necessarily see the other owner face-to-face, then we're going to have an issue with the use of them in the end. And then just limited staffing. As you can see, there's 229 total short-term rentals that are there. It still takes some time to go through the process, so we're still using the man-hours to prioritize the short-term rentals as a high priority for the community, since that's what's being voiced. So in the end, this is just to give you an overview of code enforcement's total activity. For the past year, we probably received about 4,000 what I would call complaints, not to say that they're actually code enforcement validated complaints, but just complaints that come through our department. Through that, there's been a transition of code enforcement actually taking on the whole breadth of code enforcement. So we resolved or dissolved the abatement side, and now code enforcement deals with both property maintenance and substandard. So they've taken on that load as work, and that's been about 600 cases that were shifted from one subunit to the other. And then currently, again, we have the 229 short-term rental enforcements that we're following up on. Staffing-wise, we have a supervisor. We have three, I would say, code enforcement staff. We still have the grant staff, and then we have a part-time weekend officer. So that's currently where we're at with our staffing. And again, we're keeping it a priority. We're working hard to move forward with what council and the community is, and it's a highly productive season. I mean, as we all know, we're right next to Disneyland. They just opened up the Star Wars tour. There's events going on every weekend at the Anaheim Convention Center, so we're staying abreast of keeping these things at a high priority. So,
Thank you.
you have any
I do have some
follow-up questions? Yes.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I do. 229 is a lot, and it seems like, I don't know if that's a steady number, or if we're kind of experiencing an uptick again. As you're saying, the convention center is busier than ever. Disneyland, obviously, opening up, Star Wars Land and so forth. Maybe it's just people are more aware. Maybe the network of these STR people is just very strong, and they're able to grapevine and know that this is a great area, and everybody wants to be over there. I know you're using soft gloves, but let me know when we're going to start using the angry gloves, okay? Please. Okay. In terms of the software program, is it not working fast enough? Is that what you mean by that?
Well, it's actually working at a rate that, is that me or is that?
Yeah. I don't know. Okay.
So it's actually working really well for us because of the
Okay.
fact that what it is, like if you go to a buffet and you got a whole bunch of food, now you got to choose to eat from the whole city as compared to being concentrated on one district. So we're getting short-term rentals from all over, so it's just getting staff out there. So it's not a matter of the software. The software's working perfectly. It's just the staff behind it to follow up and write the citations for the short-term
I
rentals that
see.
we find.
I think it's important for residents to understand that that software program isn't a fix-all. There's still a boots-on-the-ground
Correct.
effort. There's still a lot of man-hours and time that it takes
To
from
go out
kind of
there,
that
yeah.
admin side as well as going out there and verifying. So the software program isn't going to do all the work.
No, just of the initial portion. And like I was saying, as we move through the evaluation period of this software, now that people have gotten cited and they continue the activity, that's where the software kind of stops at that point. Now that's where the man-hours come to knock and really have to structure, some different enforcement mechanisms that we're evaluating those.
Okay.
So there is a harder glove coming, but we need to make sure that it's lined up correctly with what we've done so far.
Sure. I know in my conversations with Lisa Kim, we talked about the convention center and how some of those conventions are growing. And so then we kind of have this problem of not only the STRs, but parking and so forth. So is there a way to maybe give a little more attention to those specific times we know a large convention is coming in?
Absolutely. David and I are working to explore, looking at the active event calendar, and if there are any peak events, then to certainly redeploy our staffing resources to ensure an outreach, whether it's door hangers in and around the neighborhood, that STRs are prohibited, and then also follow through with enforcement.
Okay. I know that I have a lot of residents, and I think it's wonderful because they want to take ownership of their neighborhood. They want their neighborhoods back. They care very deeply. They send myself, and I know recently the mayor as well, a lot of photos of cars in the driveway, the Arizona tags, people walking in with luggage. Is forwarding those on to you helpful, or is the affidavit working the way it should? What can I tell, or what can residents do so that they feel they're being proactive and helping, but making sure they're not spinning their wheels, that it's actually data, information that's going to help you?
No, continue to send that information, because what happens is we send out the citation, the person takes their advertisement down off the website, and from us, it's that extra bit of effort that lets us know that they're still active doing that. Whether and again, we're trying to find out how there's, like you said, if it's word of mouth or just by references, how they're still advertising beyond taking it down. But we found that some of them are pretty slick. They'll take it down at 5 o'clock or take it all the way down until 6 p.m. and then put it back up there because they know our time that we work. Or again, they'll book it out for however long, and then after that standpoint, when the booking goes out, they'll open it for a couple of days and then book up to a certain amount and take it down. So they're doing creative things to not have their advertisement be up all the time. So we've just learned that over the course of the last 3 months, what they're doing to circumvent our monitoring of the site.
It's a giant cat and mouse game. It's always in flux and always changing and shifting, I'm sure, which always makes it more difficult. The $2,000 fine, could that be given every day that they're not in compliance?
Right, but after the software and the initial citation, it would take a door knocking every day to validate that they're there, and the person saying I'm from out of town to really have a daily fine on that. Again, we've looked at what other cities are doing. We've seen their enforcement. Some cities have code enforcement strictly dedicated to short-term rentals because they're in areas that are even more lavish than ours in the sense that, we have a number that's 229. There might be at the thousands, at this point in time. I mean, others have increased that fine. Some cities go up to 10,000, 15,000. I mean, there's really no, but that's.
General cities are capped at 1,000. So charter cities, in their charters, can increase their fines.
Are there any other offensive violations other than the 2 that we're currently citing for at 1,000 each? Is there a way to augment?
Next up is just to try to figure out a daily way to
There's a good revenue stream here if we can do it right. I mean, 160 grand, if we can keep that going, couldn't that potentially offset the cost of maybe hiring an additional part-time or down the road at some point in time?
Well, yeah, but we also, the whole point of enforcement is to stop it.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So I don't want to create this thing where the people find a mechanism to make back the money that we're citing them, only to keep it going, because that's not what the public, I think, wants.
No,
with
that's
this. They
very
want,
true.
They want to stop it.
They've made it very clear that they want.
Constitutional.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right, well, then there's that.
It would
I obviously, it sounds like code enforcement has their hands full, not just with the STR issue, but with many others. So code enforcement now is sort of under the umbrella of building safety and planning. And so you're taking on what illegal builds and so forth at this point in time?
That's correct.
Okay, so I think, and I'm sure my colleagues have some questions, I just want to make note of this, that I would appreciate if we could direct staff to come back, give you guys ample amount of time, maybe after the first of the year, and we could do a comprehensive look at code enforcement, maybe come back and continue the discussion on STRs, and just a broad overview of code enforcement and what it looks like, because I think all of us up here can honestly say that whether it's day-to-day basis or very frequently, we're all getting a lot of questions about code enforcement. I think it's one of those issues that really resonates with the community. They want to know what's going on. That's an outreach and education tool for all of us to be able to let them know what it is we're doing and the diligent efforts that we're undertaking. So I know I would appreciate it if we could get that report back after the first of the year.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Please, George.
Yeah, I just have a question. You said there was approximately 29 citations written before the software. Is that
That's
correct?
specifically for short-term rentals, not
Okay.
code
How many has
enforcement.
been written since the software?
Since the
Since we've gotten the
software?
software, how many citations do you?
That was the 80.
So there's 80? Okay, so we've had a
80
dramatic
citations.
increase
Yes.
in just a short period of time.
Correct.
I just also wanted to caution of relying solely on the software. I think there's, like the one I sent you on Bailey Street, the apartment complex that's basically an SRT apartment complex. You know, I keep getting complaints on that over and over again. They literally have Yelp reviews. And they're on the Airbnb website. They're up there right now. I just checked it right now. It's still up. You know, I don't think that software is catching everything. You know, I think there might be some loops. So, you know, I just caution that we get too over-reliant on the software. Sometimes we might need to go back to the traditional methods on a few of these. I question that software is catching it, because I'm seeing Yelp reviews, I'm seeing it on the Airbnb website, I'm seeing it, and it's been there for a couple months, and, you know, I don't know.
No, understood.
It-
That's why I said it took a few months to see what the software is capable of doing, and now we can basically move forward with different means and follow-ups and other mechanisms to assist the software along with our officers.
I also, you know, echo Councilmember Kloffenstein's sentiments. If we need to do an Operation Hammer or something where we just focus on SRTs for a couple months and let's get this under control, you know, maybe we need to do that. You know, everything else to the side, let's make it a priority, and you know, and I don't know if you call it Operation Hammer or Operation SRT or whatever you want to call it, but you know, if we need to, you know, get the assistance of the local PD here and whatever it might take, but I'm all for it. I think we need to make a statement and make it hard. And I think once you do that for a couple months, you kind of probably would eliminate a lot of the problems.
We'll definitely look into that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was just going to say, Sunday night, I think on the local news, it was on about some court cases that have been won in Northern California and even back east. But I think it was private people suing each other. But nationally, a lot of people are realizing that short-term rentals, everybody thinks they're great and everything, unless you live next door. So if you're that person that lives next door to one, it's a total nightmare. It's a nightmare. And people are starting to realize that our bedroom communities aren't places to have a resort hotel. So we're going to keep fighting and to preserve our neighborhoods, because the quality of life for that individual that has to live next door to that house is almost unbearable.
Go back to the map. We can see that it's everywhere. I was really surprised to see that all the way down to south of my district, which is near the Mile Square Park, and also along the Freeway 22 by Brookhurst. It's very strange that it populates almost everywhere from you know, west of Beach Boulevard to all the way to the the east end, where there are a lot of activities. Now, I see a lot of yellow dot and green dot, as well as red dot, which is, if I take a quick look at glance of it, it looks like each dot color represents about the same amount of category. So, can you explain to me what does it really mean by the green dot, complying with land use regulation? I thought STR is not, allowed in our city. So what does that mean by complying with land use regulation? Does that mean they can operate as STR?
No, what that means is that the software looks over the city as a whole, and things that come back as hotels or apartments or legal land uses, that's the green. So Great Wolf Lodge showed up on the rental kind of skew. So that would be green. They make it green to say, hey, Great Wolf Lodge isn't a short-term rental, it's an actual hotel. So the greens are the hotels and motels, basically.
The lodge is a short-term rental. It's just, a legal one.
The granny flats.
So that means that we should not be alarmed with that green dot then?
Well, they can't necessarily eliminate the green dots from the map, so they just made them green to show that they're, motels and hotels.
Okay.
I think, council member, if I can also add, that's what our code enforcement officers will go out and verify. Host Compliance is a clearinghouse of all different websites that promote short-term rental, whether it's Airbnb, VBRO, and a whole slew of others. So it's really capturing all these advertisements of the short-term rental properties and then placing it in this database. And so, while it's a beginning of really identifying the short-term rental activity in the city of Garden Grove, to Councilmember Brightingham's point, we can't just rely on the software. We do have to rely on our local Garden Grove residents that provide the formal complaints relating to STRs, the photographs that they provide to us via email and via the online complaint system. All of that collectively is our STR enforcement. It just, sometimes there's an overlap with the host compliance software. There's an overlap maybe with a formal affidavit that comes in. So we're building our case as it relates to these violations. But just to point out, it's a clearinghouse of a whole bunch of websites that promote properties for rent. And so it's a resource for us. It has proven in most of our cases that it streamlines our staff's ability to target and focus on responding to STR violators, but it's a work in progress as well.
Thank you.
Very much for the great presentation. I guess you'll be back in maybe January or something like that, is what I said. Okay.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you. On to matters from council members. George, anything?
Yeah, a couple. We welcomed yesterday Planet Fitness to the city of Garden Grove with a grand opening at Beach and Garden Grove Boulevard. We're glad to have them. Also, recently, the In-N-Out opened up over there.
Yeah.
Good to have an In-N-Out. The city is looking for folks who make homemade items to participate in the Holiday Boutique. So if you are artistically talented and would like to participate, the city's looking for you. You can contact the city or via the website. Halloween is going to be coming up here pretty soon, so please be safe with the little ones. Illuminate their costumes. Check their candy before you let them eat it. You always hear those horror stories of some kid eating something and somebody spiked it or something. So, make sure all the seals are good before you let your children eat those treats. And with that being said, I have one kind of I don't know if it's a grievance, but our parks get used quite a bit for activities, from family festivals to, family events to festivals to stuff. And recently, I've noticed a trend where some political activities is happening in parks, demonstrations, this type of thing. I really believe that council should be notified when these happen. I don't know if the city is notifying, if Parks is notifying the police, especially when the real controversial things are coming up, where things could get out of hand. There was one Sunday, and it's one of those things that, you know, I find out after the fact that this is happening in Garden Grove and people are complaining. That shouldn't happen. The council should know when something like that is happening. The location that it was being held was one that was preventing kids from using the actual facility. So I'm sure they rented it out. I'm sure Parks knew about it. I'm not necessarily saying it was a good or a bad demonstration. I mean, whatever they want to do, or event or political activity they want to do. But at the very minimum, council should be made aware of those events when they're happening in our public parks. And police should be aware too, because sometimes those things go sideways. Believe me, I know firsthand, those things go sideways. And, you know, police might need to have a heads up if they're going to have a little increased staffing for those days or whatnot. So please, you know, I was kind of sideswiped by it. I got 3 texts on the day after the event. So anyway.
I just wanted to mention that this Saturday, the Garden Grove Women's Civic Club will have their annual holiday boutique at Gilbert and Chapman from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Please go out and support that. That's all I have.
I have a slew of things to comment on. I would like to kind of jump in on what was made comment by Council Bertigam. I actually attended that event. It was extremely peaceful. There was vendors selling lip scrubs, lotions, T-shirts, and there was bands playing. I saw many of the residents in Garden Grove there. There was no issue whatsoever. So I just want to point that out. Tomorrow, October 23rd, there's going to be a Tip-A-Cop event at Red Robin from 5 to 10 p.m. to raise funds for Southern California Special Olympic athletes. On Thursday, October 24th at 3 p.m., Kia is having their grand opening on Harbor. Also on Thursday, October 24th from 4:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. at Buena Clinton Youth and Family Center, the city will celebrate Dia de los Muertos. This fun event will include activities for the whole family to enjoy, including a costume parade, pumpkin contest, raffles, and prizes. And because we don't have council for the next 2 weeks, I want to highlight some events that are happening later. So on Tuesday, October 29th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Garden Grove Community Meeting Center, the city, along with Small Business Development Center and Latina Nerds, will be hosting El Valor de un Logo, which translates to the value of a logo. The purpose of this workshop is to educate business owners on the importance of designing a professional logo and how that can help increase sales for their business. This is the first time the city has offered a workshop in Spanish, so I'm really excited to see this happening. And lastly, on Veterans Day, Monday, November 11th, from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m., the city, in conjunction with Representative Lou Correa, will be hosting a Veterans Day flag-raising ceremony at OC Fire Authority Station 81 across the street from City Hall. I would like to invite and encourage my council colleagues and members of the community to attend. It is my understanding that staff will be posting information to the city's website and social media very soon. Thank you.
I just have a couple things, one of which I mentioned the mosquito issue with the irrigation during the parks plan, and I wanted to just mention it again. We're still battling the mosquitoes. Mosquito season isn't over, even though we're almost in November. And what I wanted to mention, and something I haven't shown yet, is at Vector Control, they give out these little wipes, and they have them at all of their events, and this is kind of the wipe and the repellent that they kind of promote and say is one of the best, and it doesn't contain DEET, actually, but it works really well. Great reviews on Amazon, and you can actually buy this in a spray, and you can buy these wipes. They last for up to 12 hours. It's Natrapel or Natrapel is what it's called. You can find it on Amazon. I don't know if you can see this.
Don't flush it.
Probably not very well. But I highly recommend getting this, not only spraying yourself or wiping yourself down with this, but if you get the spray, you could spray your screen doors or your screens of your windows, anything we can do to keep these mosquitoes out of our home and out of our yards. And please share information with your neighbors or your elderly. Dump and drain. Take precautions on your property. It's definitely a shared responsibility. I also want to talk about illegal dumping. I drive up and down Lamson a lot, and I can't tell you how many times I see a mattress, a couch, a chair. And I appreciate that you might think somebody wants it, but nobody probably wants your stinky mattress. I'm sorry. So what you can do is you can call Republic, and they will come and pick it up. It's a special bulk pickup, so you can put that chair out there, you can put that table, your mattress, whatever that large item is, and Republic will come and magically remove it for you. So the number to call is 714-238-2444. Thank you.
This Saturday, the 26th, at the Vietnam War Memorial, there will be 2 services for the 85 people. That include 4 former Navy servicemen, U.S. Navy servicemen, and 81 Vietnamese airborne servicemen. This group of patriotic people perished in 1965. And during the Vietnam War, there were about 53,000 U.S. soldiers and about 500,000 Vietnamese soldiers sacrificed their life for the war. And there are still a few thousand MIA from the U.S. servicemen. My heart really go out to them. But the story about these 85 people really touched my heart. Their plane, which is flew by the 4 U.S. Navy officers, somehow crashed into the mountain in the middle of the jungles. And it took decades for the U.S. MIA team to be able to locate them. The 4 remains of the U.S. Servicemen were returned to and all of the other 81 soldiers were returned to Hawaii. It's easy to identify the 4 U.S. servicemen through DNA, and so they were buried a few years ago. And the other 81 Vietnamese veterans, the airborne veterans, remain locked up in a U.S. base in Hawaii for years. But finally, the Department of Defense have agreed to pass the remains of those 81 soldiers to the Vietnamese community here in Westminster. And so we will have a memorial services for all of them, 85 of them. And former Navy officer and former U.S. Senator Jim Webb will reside over the memorial services. It starts at 9 a.m. In the morning. And then in the evening at 6 p.m. there will be a candle virgil for 85 of them. If you have some time, please come by and pay tribute to those who have sacrificed so much for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have anything you'd like to share on behalf? You don't need to, but if you'd like.
Actually, I do.
Okay, great. Go for it.
Last week, Councilmember Kim Nguyen and I were able to attend the League of California Cities annual conference. And at the conference, we attended a variety of educational sessions focused on many of the very important issues that we're currently facing, addressing housing needs, homelessness, preparing for the 2020 census, optimizing outcomes through the use of data and technology. So lots of neat stuff that we were exposed to. But I wanted to mention at the conference, Councilmember Nguyen was also sworn in for a second term as the League of California Cities Orange County Division large city representative. So with Councilmember Nguyen's appointment to the 2020 Board of Directors, Garden Grove will continue to have a significant voice in league policy and programming. So it's really great that Councilmember Nguyen was appointed and will be representing Garden Grove.
Yeah.
Yeah, so congratulations. And then I also wanted just to alert the community to some construction activity on the 22 freeway that's happening over the next several days. It's happening mostly in the later evening, but since many of us drive the 22 freeway, I wanted to mention that there's a full closure of the westbound lane, SR 22, between Main Street and La Vida Avenue on-ramp from 10:30 PM to 5:30 AM for the next 3 days. And then there's also a full closure of eastbound SR 22 Collector Distributor Road near the City Drive on-ramp from 11:30 PM to 4:30 AM. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Legal counsel, do we have a need
Yeah,
for closed session?
we had
or
closed
report?
session earlier, and there's no reportable action out of that closed session.
Thank you. And per recommendation from Charles Mitchell, we're going to adjourn the meeting tonight in memory of Edward Royce Sr. Thank you. We are adjourned.